Thank you for joining today's conference, Submitting an RCPP Classic Proposal in the RCPP portal. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the chat panel by using the associated icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. As a reminder, there's a polling question open at the right bottom of your screen. Please answer the polling question. It will be open for the next 30 minutes. All audio lines have been muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We will give you instruction on how to ask the question at that time. To submit a written question, please select all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel, enter your question in the box provided. When you are ready to send, hit enter on your keyboard. With that, I'll turn the call over to Kari Cohen. Kari, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, and welcome to everyone. Looks like we have a good crowd today. My name is Kari Cohen. I'm the branch chief for the projects branch here at NRCS National Headquarters, and it's my team that has national responsibility for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. So glad you could join us today. We're going to help walk you through how to submit an RCPP Classic proposal. We've currently got our funding announcement on the street, and there is no better time to apply to RCPP. We have combined our funding from fiscal years 20 and 21. So we've got up to $360 million available in this competition. Compare that with the fiscal year 19 competition where we announced awards for just over $200 million. And you can see that there is no time like the present to apply to RCPP. We're constantly in pursuit of perfection with the RCPP portal, which is the software, the website through which we accept your proposals. And so we're always tweaking it, trying to make it a little bit easier for you all to handle and to navigate. And it's my staff that's really responsible for that good work. I'm going to turn the webinar over to Rebecca Lauster, who's our portal guru, and Rebecca's going to walk you through many of the elements that you'll need to submit your proposal. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Kari. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning to those of you that may be in some other time districts. As Kari has mentioned today, we're going to spend about the next hour kind of walking you through the portal, the web-based system on how to kind of get your proposals submitted so that way we can consider them for funding. So those of you that have previously applied, this webinar may not be as insightful because it will just sort of be covering the how-tos and the basics. So that way you can kind of just familiarize yourself as you start to get in there. And if you have never applied for RCPP utilizing our web-based system, you may find this extremely helpful during this time. So with that, next slide, please. All right, perfect, thank you. All right, so today's topics, just a quick reminder, as Kari has already mentioned about our proposal submission. We'll be just giving you a quick overview of what the portal purpose is. I will also be showing you kind of this overview of the system so that way you can understand some of the key things to kind of highlight that you may find that come up, tips and tricks to kind of help you where to find help. This is going to be extremely important because we do have several great guides out there along with help desk and an email help desk, so that way you can have your questions answered as needed. And then at the end, we'll open it up to any questions and answers that pertain to the portal at that time. Next slide, please. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so as Kari has mentioned, we have our RCPP Classic proposals are going to be due on November 4th. November 4th, 2020. You are going to be required to use our portal, our web-based portal, for the application. So a couple of things to note, that to gain access to this system, you are required to have level 2 e-authentication access. This level 2 e-authentication access is not something that we as NRCS have any control over, and it can take up to, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks for you to gain access. It can be faster, but we do ask that you plan for that if you need to get that, that e-authentication access up and running, that you please allow plenty of time for that to happen. Now, the other thing to note is that even after you have your level 2 e-authentication access, you still are required to have a portal account. And so that can take up to 3 business days, especially as we start to move and we get a lot of requests coming in, because we have to then basically take your portal account and check it against your level 2 e-authentication access. So there's a delay in there that we, again, don't have any control over. So we do have to allow some business days to have that happen. So we cannot always instantly grant you access. So again, please just kind of keep this in mind, that if you've never accessed the portal before, you want to go ahead and submit an application, I would go ahead and begin the process now. Next slide, please. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so here is why we really developed this portal. We really wanted a way for you to have web-based submission of the proposals. So that way, any place that you are out, especially as we've been facing this, this pandemic time frame where we're not necessarily in offices, many of us are working from home. So we needed to be able to allow for us to accept these proposals so you don't ever have to leave the comfort of your workspace. So that is exactly what this is. It is definitely a web-based submission that you will go in. It is actually very user-friendly. We've designed it so that way it kind of walks you through. It should be very similar to, kind of filling out any proposals or information online that you may already do in your personal or in your professional lives. The other thing to kind of note is that this portal access is also going to be the key that if you are awarded an agreement, your programmatic agreement and any future supplemental agreements will actually be negotiated utilizing the portal also. This is also where your project management will be occurring for any of those projects that have been awarded. So the portal will become very familiar to you over the years, especially if you're awarded an RCPP project. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a couple of the overall what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of accessing the portal. And then we're going to talk about quickly how you kind of navigate that homepage and what's on there, and then what is the content of the proposal. Many of this, or much of this, should look very familiar if you've already familiarized yourself with the APF that has been published, along with the how-to guides that are out on the website. This should just look very similar to what you've already seen. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I've mentioned, and it's there, it is definitely worth mentioning again. You are required to have USDA Level 2 e-authentication access. As I've mentioned before, that this is something that is outside of NRCS's control. So this is department-wide. We don't get to manage this. We don't manage the process. So we don't have any pull to help, if there's issues, anything like that to kind of help you through. All we can do is send you to their website. So the first place is that you need to get your e-authentication. If you do not have that, you can go directly to the eauth.usda.gov website where you would start that process. There is also a link on our RCPP portal site that will then tell you, give you that exact same link again if you answer the question that no, you do not have a level 2 e-authentication. As I mentioned, that it is required level 2. There is a level 1, and then you have to go on to level 2. So please make sure that you have level 2 because that will stall your application or your account access until you get that level 2 taken care of. So Once you have obtained your level 2 e-authentication and you're brand new to the portal, you're going to have to come to our public site, our partner login. The website is located here. It's also been published on the website and in all of our guides. And what you will do is you would click on Request Partner Access. So you're going to be that new user. If you've not used the portal before. If you have used the portal before, your access should still be fine, and you could go ahead and click in as a partner user, log in here, and enter your credentials without an issue. If you found that your account has been deactivated, all you'll need to do is submit an email or a new user request, and then that will go ahead and get that reactivated for you. So please, if you've had access to the system before and you log in and you found that you no longer have access, please go ahead and click out that new user and we can get that rectified for you. And if you've never had access, again, that new user is going to be really, really important for you. Next slide, please. So once you are here, you're going to click on that, mention that Start Here, that new users, and you're going to have an access form that's going to show up. It is going to be really important that you tell us your partner organization. So one of the things that RCPP does require is that, that you are an eligible partner. So, so to be an eligible partner, the APF defines what kind of partner types and partner organizations are eligible, and so you do need to be able to meet those and demonstrate that. We have had just a few instances where individuals without a business or an association have tried to apply, and those have been denied because, again, it is required that you are a partner organization in order to apply for RCPP. So please make sure that you are able to tell us this. Next slide. So once you have submitted that information, you will then get an email that comes back that will tell you that you've been granted access. Once you've been granted access, then you would come back here and you would then click in, and right here is where you'll see that you will enter in your user ID and password. So you would click in as your partner user, you would click sign in, and then this is where you would go. And at that point, this is where you're going to need to know what your e-authentication login. So that this is going to be different. This is based on your e-authentication. So if you forget that password or that user ID, that is not something that we can change. Again, you would have to go through the e-authentication process to get that taken care of for you. So please, please, please make sure that you are keeping track of that. Now, as a partner, you will not have to use that link pass PID, which you see kind of on the left-hand side. You will always use your user ID and password. Next slide, please. So once you've logged in, this is what your kind of navigating your home screen looks like. So when you come in, you're going to see, depending upon the, what you may have had access or not had access to in the past, you're going to see RCPP proposals, RCPP projects, and you're also going to see a help tab. We are going to suggest also that it is best to use the portal when you're using Chrome, Google Chrome, or Microsoft Edge. There are some compatibility issues with Internet Explorer, and so that will cause issues where your submits, your entries may not work, things may lock up. So that will always be one of the first things that we will ask, is that you make sure that you're using, it does work on Safari, so if you're a Mac user, it does work there. It's just that we are just having some issues with the Internet Explorer. So please note that that is not something that we can change again. I'm sorry. So you will need to make sure that you're using the correct type of window browser there for you. So when you come in, as I mentioned, you'll see these three tabs across, and then you're also going to see this need help. So what is here is that there's a log a ticket, you can email, and then there's a support hotline. So that way, once you're logged in, if you're having an issue in the portal, you know, where you've clicked something, it's giving you an error message, it's not clicking, it's not moving, we will always ask that you, you know, take a screenshot, and then you can submit a ticket or you can send an email. So that way our support desk can then start to help kind of triage what is going on and how best to help you with that. So that those resources are available for you to reach out to. So the other thing to kind of note is that in here, the proposals, the projects, and the help. So the help tab is going to have some videos and some frequently asked questions. Some of them are going to pertain to the 2014 Farm Bill, so they won't be as pertinent to you doing a 2018 Farm Bill right now, but we did leave them up because we still have partners, as I've mentioned, that have been using this portal for quite a while now, and so we needed those in there. So, you know, again, you may go there and you're thinking, wow, this doesn't quite match up with what I'm seeing, and it absolutely may not because, again, as I mentioned, 2014 Farm Bill versus 2018 Farm Bill. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're working through that. So as you'll see right now, when you kind of log in, it will tell you that new proposals for fiscal year 2020 are currently being accepted. So what this allows you to do is actually create that proposal. So next tab, please. So when you navigate, the first place you're going to go is you're going to go to that RCPP Proposals tab, and you're going to select the 2018 Farm Bill. This is going to be really important because if you select 2014, nothing will show up for you, especially if you're a new user and have not used it previously. Now, if you are a returning user and had submitted something from the 2014, something will show up. Your previous proposals will actually be there for you to review. So we don't actually get rid of your information. It does stay so that way you can see what has happened in the past. You won't be able to do anything with that information because we're not, you know, you can't copy and edit or anything like that, but it is there so you could review it. So at this point, you will be able to click on the new proposal. Oh, I'm so sorry, that date did not get changed. The new proposal deadline, which is going to be November 4th of 2020, as long as you are clicking that before that deadline, that new proposal button will be there. If it is after the deadline, that new proposal button will no longer show up and you will not be able to submit. This is really, really important also that the deadline is met because the system will automatically lock you out. You will not be able to submit the proposal if the deadline has passed. And our deadlines are on Eastern Standard Time, so please do keep that in mind as you are working through this. And there can, you know, this can create some issues as you're working. So please, again, just kind of manage that kind of timeline because the system will automatically shut you out. Next slide, please. Okay, so when you first come in, the very first screen, what you're going to see is there's going to be this left-hand navigation over here, and it's really laid out that shows you exactly where you should be and what you can do. You can go back and forth between those. You can save as draft, and you can also save as continue. So what I'm not going to go into like a whole depth here onto each of these screens because, again, you're going to be able to see it. We have how-to guides, but, you know, I'm just trying to give you an overall feel for what will be happening in here. So the basic project information really is where you're coming in and you're just telling us your project name, what funding pool, lead state, partner states, that SAM.gov registration, your DUNS number, you know, who your project directors are going to be, and so forth. So what I want to point out, and this is going to be really important for you guys as you move through, save as draft allows you guys to save the progress. Where save as continue will mark the basic project information complete if everything has been filled out appropriately. So anything with a red asterisk means that it is required, and so you do need to have something in there in order for you to be able to save and continue. So you are able to save as draft if you're just kind of, you know, trying to put some information in, but you're not ready to kind of say, yes, this is done. And don't worry, you can also change this at any time up until the proposal deadline is due and you push and the submit is gone. Next slide, please. So for the project details, so as you can see in this example on the left-hand side, that basic project information there, it got a green check. So what that means is that I was able to mark Save as Continue, and I met all of the things that needed to be filled out. So it means I've satisfied all of those mandatory requirements, and it means I'm good to go. So what will happen here is, you'll be able to kind of cross-reference anything that doesn't have a green check at the end. Then that means that there's something missing in there and that you've got to go back and you've got to get that corrected in order to submit. That's often a common question, is that the submit doesn't ungray when you think you're done. And so you're looking for those green check marks kind of throughout the whole thing. So again, project details, this is really where you're coming in and you're telling us, is the project a 5-year? When do you expect it to start? What are those resource categories? Some of those things of that nature are going to be in here. Again, Save as Draft and Save as Continue are there for you to have those as options also. Next slide, please. So for the executive summary this year, this time we're looking for it to be kind of split into two. We're really looking for a description of your goals and objectives, and then also that description of what your expected environmental, economic, and social outcomes are going to be. This does feed into the system later on, so you'll be able to see those if you get selected as a project. So again, we're trying to set up as much of the proposal to take us forward into the future if you're selected as we move forward. But again, there are character limits on all of these things, so please make sure that you are abiding by those character limits. And I will also let you know that the character limits does include spaces. So please make sure that you are succinct and, telling your story, but you're doing it in a way that, really conveys the message without a lot of extra words when maybe they're not as needed. Next slide, please. Partners and contributions. So as you can kind of see, we're just kind of walking through, again, very, very simply here. So a couple of things to note on the project partners page. Partners and contributions section on the project partners, there will always be a default placeholder for the lead partner. One of the things that will be required is that you as that lead partner are going to have to make sure that you fill out your partner entity type. It will be a red arrow, which you see right there in the middle of the screen. And what that is really telling you is that, hey, we need you to go in and you need to tell us this. You are not required as a lead partner to upload a letter of contribution because, you're really telling us that as the lead partner, you're taking on all of this work anyway. So don't worry about that letter of contribution. That is not a requirement, but it is a requirement for you to tell us your partner and entity type. That will hold you up if for some reason you forget to do that. It's a very common mistake, but it will not allow you to get the green check. The other thing is this is also where you will add your partners and any partner contributions here in this section. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, that project partner, your partner entity type will need to be done for you as a lead partner along with all of your other partners that you're planning to bring on. One thing to note is that the letter of contribution, we do need letter of contributions for every other partner that is not a lead partner. What we do not need, though, is letters of support. So what we're really looking for is if you're telling us that ABC partner is coming on and they're providing, $5,000 for this, that, they have a letter that says, I'm ABC partner and I am providing, partner contribution in the amount of $5,000 to do A, B, and C, and D for this project. We don't need ABC partners to say, I really like this project and I support it, please pick it. that is not what is needed at this time. This is really for those partners that are coming forward and, helping you bring that leverage of that private money to the table so that way we can, understand what is going to happen here. One thing to kind of note that this will hold you, can be a little bit tricky, is that when it comes to the contribution categories, that there is sort of an idea here that if, for example, you're telling us that you want to use U.S. Health Easement contribution, from partner ABC, but in your FA ask, in your RCPP funding request, there is no U.S. Health Easement ask. The system is going to say, hey, there's a mismatch. You have a contribution for U.S. Health Easement, but you have no U.S. Health Easements happening on the NRCS side. So it's going to throw up this error and say, hey, you've got to get this corrected. So in most cases, if there's an easement that's being contributed, and it is a true and valid partner contribution, it may be being classified as the wrong type of contribution, and so we can easily get that corrected. Or perhaps you really did accidentally forget to ask for U.S. Health Easements in the funding request, and you're like, oh, I forgot. Let me go ahead and get that taken care of now. So that is kind of one of those little rules that we do have in there. It does get a bit tricky, though, just to kind of throw that out there, that so you do have to make sure that when you're looking at what you're contributing and what you're asking for, that there is a match in those cases, in some of those cases. And the system does give you that flag. Next slide, please. All right, so a couple of things on the RCPP funding request. So again, this is really where you're going to go in and you're going to start to talk to us about that financial assistance request, the technical assistance request, that whether it be for partner use or for NRCS use, and what you want to do. This is really where you're going to start to do it. But a couple of things to kind of highlight in the funding request summary so that way you guys are aware. So the partner contribution ratio, so that we do want to see as best as possible a 1-to-1. And so it is going to be calculating that out based on your contribution section and also what's happening in your funding request. So what will happen is, if it's less than 1-to-1, it's going to show you that. You may need to be prepared to justify that at some point as to why that is less than 1-to-1. Or perhaps it was a mistake and you're like, oh, oops, I need to go back and I didn't account for this. That does happen. That's not an issue. So just note that is calculating that. There will be error messages that you will see throughout this section. And so you will need to make sure that you actually correct all of those errors because it will not let you submit them. The most common ones are going to be, hey, you've exceeded the maximum FA allowed, you've exceeded the minimum NRCS implementation TA is too little, things of this nature. So there are some rules that have kind of been laid out in the APF that that you guys should be familiar with, and how all of those percentages are calculated, but our system is just trying to keep track of them in there for you. One thing to note is that the NRCS implementation TA is auto-calculated, and it's based on what you as the partner are inputting. To make one thing kind of note, the maximum financial assistance allowed is $7 million, so that's kind of where we start all of this. Now, I will say that there is a variance request, so that has come up in the past. There is a place in here that if you would like to request, more FA and less TA, or more TA and less FA for whatever reason, there is a way to submit that in the system, and then you have to justify it. Now, when you submit it, that does not mean that it is approved, nor does it mean that it will be approved. It just means that we've accepted that you're asking for something different, and we will evaluate it at that time. So that approval of that variance happens at a later date and time. So please just note that this, when you put the request in, it does not mean you have been granted this variance. It is literally just saying, I would like to do something different. Please consider it. And here is why. Next slide, please. Okay, so with this one, a couple of things here. Just I wanted to point out some of the kind of common errors. So this one says on the top here, please be sure that you have financial assistance records with activity type equivalent to contribution categories. So again, that was what I had just talked about, where you have an SA record that matches a contribution category. So that's telling you, hey, there's something going on here. You've asked for land management, but you've said something in the contribution category that's not adding up. So please go back and check that. The other thing to kind of note down here is that we do ask you the question, describe how your organization has the capability and capacity to perform technical assistance deliverables in the RCPP funding. And so really what we're trying to ask you to do there is please tell us how you can deliver that technical assistance that you are asking for. So really we need you to make sure that you're telling us how you can do that, what you're proposing to do, how it's going to be paid for, you know, that you're showing us that you can do this. Because, you know, in essence, what you're saying is that I would like to have money to do this, and here's my credentials. The other thing is that you have the opportunity to upload your supporting documents for those TA funding requests, you know, so that's if you have proposed payment schedules, or if you had a watershed activity and you needed to upload the watershed plan to kind of support those TA costs, that's definitely doable. You know, so again, this is your chance to tell us how you are able and capable to do the job. Next slide, please. And to upload the map. So this is actually really simple at this point. What we're really looking for here is just a project boundary. We just need to know, where is your project going to be? How big is it? It could be the entire state. It could be a watershed. It could be 3 watersheds. You know, it can be 1 county. It can be, you know, whatever that geographic scope that you feel is appropriate for your project, that is what we're looking for here. If you are awarded a project, we will help you kind of finalize this map and get down to some better nitty-gritty. But right now, it can just be a simple project boundary, JPEG, PDF, you know, map off that you would pull off Google Map if that's easy for you. Next slide, please. So the narrative question. So this is kind of the last page where I think if you've looked at our APF, you will have seen these narrative questions. And this is where you're going to tell us what your project is trying to do. So these questions will match the APF and that partner guide, as we've mentioned. There is a character limit for every question. It is 4,000 characters. And as I've mentioned previously, it does include spaces. So we do need for you to make sure that you are, again, you know, answering these questions completely and wholly and as succinctly as possible. And making sure that you answer all parts of the question so that way we have a clear understanding of what you are trying to do. You will also have the ability to save and continue or save as drafts for each of the questions. And while you go through this, each of these questions also will get a green check mark as you work through. So you don't have to sit down and do all of them at one time. Next slide, please. So once you have, think that you're done, you've gotten all of your green checks and your submission happens, you will end up with a submit button that will now turn blue. So that blue submit will then let you push it, and it will then submit. What will then happen is when you go back to your proposal screen, you would then be able to see the status of where you're at. You can actually have, multiple proposals in progress, and then you can see here, full proposal in progress, full proposal submitted, full proposal in progress. So that way you can kind of keep track of where you're at. You can also withdraw your projects at any time before the deadline. You can also unsubmit and make corrections and resubmit before the deadline, just again, as long as it's done before the deadline. So next slide, please. So the last thing that is often asked of us is then, well, how do I get a copy of all of the information that I put in? So when you're in your screen, there's actually a print button. And so when you push the print button, the proposal will allow this PDF report to be generated. And you're going to be able to see all of the information that you've entered. So you can download it or print it, and you'll be able to see exactly how we're actually going to review it, because this is the exact same report that we use to kind of look through and review each of these proposals. So that way you can make sure that your information is correct. If nothing's correct, you can go back and change it as long as it is before the deadline. Next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, what I would like to do is actually we're going to do the where to find the help here. So next slide, please. So you may have questions. And what do we do? So as I mentioned in the portal, if you have specific portal functionality issues, so again, this is portal functionality. This is not, I don't understand what this question means. You know, I don't know who do I contact because I don't know what financial assistance is. If you have like, I've entered this information and the button will not turn, you know, green. Or I received this error message when I push this, then that is where you're going to want to make sure that you use the kind of need help ways in the portal. If you have questions on, you know, what's in the APF, or I'm sorry, what, you know, RCPP is about, you know, some more tips and tricks, we do have the partner proposal guide, which has been published to our website under the how to apply section, along with the APF is also there. So that way you can refer back to that for any clarity and questions that you have. So those are going to be the first two areas to kind of self-help. Next slide, please. So the next place to go is going to be your state RCPP coordinator. So really we call these folks your new best friend. So as you go through this, again, on that kind of how do you apply, there's a resources for submitting a proposal, and there's a link, and I've loaded it here, but it's also called the State RCPP Coordinators. Now, one thing to note is that, as with any business, sometimes we have our coordinators move in and out of jobs and positions. So this date was published as of August 21st, 20. So it may have changed, but hopefully these folks, if they have changed, would be able to direct you to the correct person to help answer them. But really what we want you guys to do is to develop that relationship with your state coordinators, because they're the ones that are really going to help you manage these projects. They're going to be familiar with, you know, the landscape and the project and what you would like to do in your states, and they're going to be able to connect you to the appropriate resources as needed. So we at the NHQ level are always able to help. But, you know, really we try to help when the state coordinators come to us and ask us questions that they are unable to answer that maybe you guys have kind of helped try to figure out. So we do try to kind of keep that line just so that way our state coordinators are able to be aware of everything that is happening with their RCPP proposals or projects in the area. So, again, as I mentioned, that there is a list that is available, and you can also check the state websites also for MRCS, because those may be more up to date if need be also. Next slide, please. All right, so before we get to the question and answer, I would like to just do a quick demo, if I could. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
You're able to see it, Rebecca.
Thank you so very much. Okay, so I hope that you are looking at what looks like a logon page for the portal. So as I mentioned, this site is definitely widely available. And so it's listed on our website, it's in the APS, so that way you guys can have access to it. So I just wanted again to point out here, this is our new user. So again, new users including NRCS staff, RCPP partners, and project applicants, we always are going to need you to start here. And here is that request access form. So as I've mentioned previously, and we've talked about that e-authentication, it does give you that website here that if you've not gotten that level 2 e-authentication, you can click there and go through that process. And then here's where we're going to start the project, or I'm sorry, not the project, the request access. If you need to tell us if you're a partner organization or NRCS staff member. So then at this point, again, as I mentioned, this will pull up. You'll just need to fill out this information. And then again, we're going to ask you if you have that level 2 e-authentication. If you say no, we're going to tell you that you will need to make sure that you have this level 2 e-authentication access. And if you say yes, it's still going to be there, but you're going to be able to submit it. So then you would just push submit. I'm not going to right now. And then, as I mentioned, it can take up to 3 business days for that to happen. So once you get into the site, so I'm assuming now at this point you're all happy, you've been granted access, so I just wanted to just quickly give you a quick live tour here. So I'm actually in what we call our testing environment, just so kind of an FYI that things may be slightly different here because I don't want to mess anything up in our real life production area. So when you come in, this is what you will be able to see. So as I mentioned previously, because this is our testing environment, we do a lot of things in here. It does keep track of all of our old and previous things. So we've done a lot of testing here for Farm Bill 18. It does keep, like I mentioned, the Farm Bill 14 information in here. So that way you kind of just can get a feel. But as you come in, you would click that new proposal. And one of the first things it's actually going to ask you, in this case right now, it's going to ask you which one are you applying for. You're going to select RCPP Classic, and you're going to push start. Okay, so now that it has come up, again, as I mentioned, this will look very, very familiar to kind of what we've gone through here already. And then the specifics and kind of updated things are also going to be in that how to apply guide. So one thing I didn't actually talk about in the PowerPoint, but I wanted to highlight here is why can't I submit? So there's this lovely little button right here. If at any time, you're like, oh, I thought I should be done. I don't understand. Why is this not turning blue? Because it should turn blue for you to submit. You can push why can't I submit? And it's going to go through and it's going to tell you, hey, these are all of the issues that we have. And so then you can kind of read through them and start to figure out what is happening there. As I mentioned before, that print button is what will bring up your proposal information that you have put in. And so this is just an example here. Of course, this is not filled out at this point, but that is an option for you to have that there. And then you can also withdraw your proposal. So let's say you went in and you started one, and then you realized that you made a mistake, and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this one. I wanted to do a different one. You can withdraw that without an issue. So at this point, what I also wanted to show you, I will show you. So when you do, I'm going to show you how to withdraw. Are you sure you want to withdraw? You would just say yes. And then what will happen is it will come back and it will show you a status of withdrawn. So as you can see, this full proposal in progress means that I could go in, I could continue. Oops, that gave me an error. Of course it did. So, I could go in and I can continue to finish that proposal if I needed to. So another thing to point out here, and then I'm going to stop here in just a moment, is that this why can't I submit button. So I know that this has been a common question that we've gotten quite a bit also is it can be rather lengthy, but there is not a way to kind of print that. So if you wanted to save it, I would suggest that you do a screenshot of that so that way you can kind of go back and look at it. That is one thing to kind of note there. So with that, I am going to stop sharing because I see we have about 15 minutes left. And are there any questions?
There are multiple questions in the chat. Kari, would you like me to read those or will you?
Go ahead, Chrissy, please.
Okay, sure. Let me start at the beginning. And we have a question from Marie Villa. Do we need an account for each organization?
Yes. For each lead partner organization that is applying for RCPP, you will need to have an account. If you're just a partner that's being part of, they do not need they don't need an organization. They don't need to be part of the portal, I'm sorry.
There is a question from Marcus Griffin. What if a partner is having issues logging into the portal? This error says that we can't log you in because of an issue with single sign-in on. Contact your Salesforce admin for help. Just some FYI background information, the partner applied last year, so had e-authorization at one point.
Sure. So that's actually a common error where their account is no longer active, so they just need to request new user access, Marcus, on that case.
This is a question from Christy Kowalski. I received access request RA26737 for the USDA external portal, and it has been approved by the NRCS Agency Grants Management Officer. You may now log in again using your e-authentication credentials and will be able to perform the actions authorized under the assigned role. But I get errors that I can't continue. What's my next step?
So, Christy, I believe in that case you're referring to the grants.gov site or the EasyFed grants. So that's a separate system, and you will have to work with your grants management officer in that case because we do not have any ability to help with that situation.
There's another question from Marie Villa. Do you have to be in SAM to apply?
So it will be a requirement that you will have a SAM.gov registration, yes.
This question is from Gerard Kennedy. Is the e-authenticated account for an individual or for an organization?
Sure. So the e-authentication account is actually for an individual. So if you know that you wanted to have multiple individuals of the same organization, they will each have to have a level 2 e-authentication.
This question is from Jonathan Liam. If you have e-authentication in a portal account but are going to submit a new proposal for a different lead partner than the previous RCPP, can you still use the same login credentials?
So you can, but it's going to create some issues. So you will need to, you're going to have to send us an email. You're going to have to work with your state RCPP coordinator because we're going to have to figure out how to potentially split your account. So, Carisi, I think Seth, one of my coworkers, is going to help kind of jump in here and move us through some other questions here too.
Okay.
So we'll try to provide some frequently asked questions on some of these login issues, but there's quite a lot of those questions, and rather than reading through each of them individually, we thought we'd get a highlight of some of the other questions in here. Rebecca, here's one for you. The one-to-one, does it have to be TA to TA, one-to-one FA to FA? I understand it's roughly a 70-30 split, but I'm trying to understand what the intent there is.
Sure. So I don't think that we've ever actually said it was one-to-one FA for one-to-one TA. We are just looking for an overall kind of that total contribution to total requested.
Here's another one. Last year we had to upload the signed partner contribution document of $5,000, for example. But we then had to break it down into 5 separate $1,000 cost basis documents for each year. This is cumbersome. Is there a way around this?
So you could, you know, just put it in that you're going to do $5,000 in 1 year, you know, without doing that. It should have, though, allowed you at least to not have to upload the same document for the same organization, that cost basis, the same organization 5 times. It should have taken credit for that. If it did not, then that was an error on our part, because we did try to minimize that.
And if it's a multi-state proposal, is one map showing the general location across all the states adequate, or do I need a map for each state?
No, one map showing it for the general area is fine for right now.
Is this presentation being recorded for review later?
Yes, it is, and it is my understanding that it will be published to the website for viewing at a later date and time.
Here's a common one. Can the applicant share the portal access with other participating partners such that the application effort can be split across the applicant pool, so to speak?
So in this case, what I'm going to suggest is that as you go through the level 2 e-authentication process, you will read and understand kind of the access and what this entails. And so I would suggest that you make sure that you fully read that and understand what you are doing before you embark upon that. We do try to leave it where a single organization can have a couple of folks, kind of come in to help manage, because we recognize that does need to happen occasionally. But we do expect, as that lead partner, that, there is probably one main point of contact that is able to get in and fulfill all of this information. So.
And another, thank you for this presentation. In weighing the Classic versus AFA opportunities, we're wondering when the next AFA announcement is anticipated to be published.
I
believe that answer, I think that answer is December, January timeframe, and probably about 60 days open. So nothing fixed in stone, but that's the rough timeframe.
Stay tuned.
Trying to find another good one here. I assume the error message listing from the help button is also downloadable for review offline.
So that is not actually right now. That was what I kind of mentioned at the very end, that why can't I submit? You need to make sure that you take a screenshot of that.
Will I be able to draft narratives outside the portal and then copy paste them into the portal?
Yes, absolutely. You are able to draft them in Word and then copy and paste them directly into the portal without an issue.
There's a possible error in one of the slides that someone pointed out. One of your slides listed a December deadline. How does that deadline relate to the November 4th deadline?
Correct, and that was one that I had pointed out when we were going through that. I did not catch that error. I'm sorry. Yes, it was a December 4th of 2019, which is last year.
Do I have to have a DUNS number in order to apply?
So you don't actually have to have a DUNS number in order to apply, but it could hold up your selection if you are awarded, because you are required to have a DUNS and a SAMS.gov.
So this one has come up a couple times too. It is another potential error on the slide. I heard the presenter mention a $7 million available. Is this just for financial assistance and does not include technical assistance? I remember hearing the max was $10 million.
Yes, I did make mention that the maximum financial assistance, because of our 70-30 split that we were looking at when we published the APF, is $7 million for financial assistance. It is a total of $10 million.
And here's one. I'm the grants officer at my agency. 2 separate departments want to submit proposals. Will we be able to submit both projects, or are we limited to only one? They are completely separate projects.
No, you will absolutely be able to submit multiple projects as long as they are separate.
That came up a few times. AFA questions a few times. When requesting the amount, will it be for the entire 5 years? And how will we differentiate between the years? I think we lost you, Rebecca. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm not sure what is meant by when the requested amount. If you're talking about the total, yes, it would be for the full 5 year of the project. And then you would break it down by each year and how much money you would like to contribute, and then also how much money you would like to request to be used from NRCS funding of each of those years.
And another question very similar to one you've answered previously, Rebecca, is can we receive a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yes, it is my understanding, again, that we will go ahead and we will post this on the website, and our RCPP state coordinators will also have access to this, so that way they can help share that as needed.
There's just a couple minutes left. Do you want to wrap up, Rebecca, or do you want me to keep reading questions?
I think, you know what, we should maybe do time for like one more, do you think?
Sure. Let me find one that's not login related. So there's an error with a contribution. If there's an error with a contribution letter and the category listed, how will the lead partner know, since the application won't be modified after submittal in November? Will the system somehow know beforehand? I think basically the question gets at misalignment between documents submitted and, you know, category drop-downs, et cetera.
Oh, no. So we would not necessarily, the system, of course, cannot tell that, but it could potentially come up during the review process, because that's really when our folks, our human folks, go in and actually look at those documents and kind of compare that information. So it would be my advice to make sure, you know, that you are kind of cross-checking those as you upload that information in there.
The only thing I might add to that is if something changes and your contributions actually have to change between the time of your proposal, in the event you are selected and your formal programmatic partnership agreement, you can renegotiate that with us at that time. As long as the new contributions are also eligible, that shouldn't be too big an issue. But we do expect meaningful contributions at the time of application, just as we would at the time of negotiation. We're at 2 o'clock, my time, Rebecca, 4 years.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that, you know, we have hopefully been able to answer some of your questions today. As I've mentioned that this was recorded, it will be posted on our website, available for you to come back and also review. But as we've mentioned on the website, there is the proposal guide along with the state RCPP coordinators to help reach out to help answer any of these questions, because they are all ready and waiting and available to help answer questions for you guys also at any time. And with that, I thank you so very much, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.